Computer. Hey everybody, welcome to our live Q&A, questions about practicing while pregnant. We're psyched to have you guys here, and we'll be open for questions throughout the whole entire thing. And for those of you who are watching this after the fact, please feel free to follow up with us, either post questions down below or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So I would say one of the first things that you need to think about immediately when you're pregnant is, obviously you want to talk to your doctor, nurse practitioner, or certified nurse midwife and get their opinion about you practicing and any special recommendations, because they know you as a person and what might be particular concerns for your body, your health, any conditions you've had in the past. But right away, your body starts producing relaxin, and relaxin is going to be how you can deliver through your birth canal. It makes all of your cartilaginous tissue softer, and it's in your body throughout the whole entirety of your pregnancy and 9 months after. So this is going to affect you 9 months after you give birth. It's important to remember that, because once the baby is out of the way, you can kind of feel like you can go back to stuff, but you really can't. And I would say in my personal experience, and Julie can speak to this or speak up in the chat, it was a solid 18 months postpartum that I felt like I had my body back. And I don't mean my body back like I wanted to go around in a bikini. I mean, like, I had control, I had strength, I could do the postures I used to do. Do you want to jump in on that, Julie, now, or do you want to?
It doesn't matter. I can jump in now or later. I mean, so this is the first time that I've actually done hot Pilates while pregnant. So I actually, and just a side note, just so you guys both know, I actually was pregnant all last summer and I had a miscarriage. It was a blighted ovum, so I actually wasn't pregnant the whole time, but my body was releasing that relaxin hormone. So you were saying, I could hear you mostly, but the relaxin makes you feel very loose, and your body just doesn't feel normal. I have a lot of SI joint stuff, and I will say that even only being pregnant for 12 weeks, I was not pregnant for another 12 weeks and I got pregnant again. The relaxin hormone still was in my body, and for those 3 months, I still had to be very careful with how I was practicing. It just really, I just take it a little bit easier, especially with a lot of forward bending, stretching like that. But yes, I will say it was definitely a good year to 2 years until I had my body, not only like, maybe if everyone's like, oh, you look good, until I physically felt like myself again. I'd say around a year, but even longer than that, because hot Pilates came out, I think, around the time my second one was 2. So I would say when I started doing hot Pilates, it really helped to bring all that pelvic floor stuff back in alignment too.
Yeah. And there's a lot of techniques we'll talk about today that are intrinsic in the hot Pilates practice that are really, really, really good for pregnant women. We'll get there. So Julie had mentioned her SI. A lot of women postpartum have sacroiliac injuries, or challenges and problems with their SI. So your pelvis comes down like a triangle. Your sacrum comes down like a triangle into your pelvis, and this joint right here, it's a stabilizing and a weight transferring joint. So it's designed to take whatever you have in your arms and transfer that weight into your legs. And so it's a really stable joint. It should be, for the most part, immobile. It has a very small amount of nutation and counter nutation. But what happens for a lot of pregnant women is there's a ton of ligaments that crisscross that joint. They get soft during pregnancy. And if you continue to go like really hard and backward and forward bending, the ligaments can get a little bit slack, particularly postpartum. And you can end up in a situation where you have a destabilization. Hey, Jen. We have destabilization of that can last a long, long time. The joint, just to think about what it looks like, is kind of modeled like pavement, and the opposite side fits exactly into it. So if you're off a little bit in terms of the alignment of your SI, it's extremely painful. And Jen just jumped up on the call, and she has also had 2 pregnancies in the studio, so maybe able to give some advice too as we go later on. So when you think about that, the relaxin makes your symphysis pubis in the front of your pelvis and the back of your pelvis super loose, so that can be flexible around the baby's head when you deliver. It's a really good thing, but it means that you have to be thoughtful and aware of what you're doing. And that's part of why they recommend you don't do things like that require balance, like climbing a ladder. Is climbing a ladder dangerous? No, but if you fell off of it, you could have, problems with your placenta. and your stability and your balance is just not the same. So one of the biggest recommendations that starts right off in yoga and Pilates is opening your feet for stability. Like, we don't do feet together in pranayama anymore. It's not like that's going to hurt you, but you'll feel a lot more stable. And the other piece is that you would think that if this relaxant was there and your joints were looser, you'd be more flexible. But what you want to remember is your body is changing, you know, every single week, the whole entire pregnancy, and towards the end, almost every single day. Your body weight and size and proportion and balance changes. So your body is constantly adapting. And if your joints get loose, your muscles are going to take up that slack and tighten up to protect you. So you may find in the pregnancy fairly early that you're capable of not doing a lot in terms of depth of what you used to do. Like, maybe you used to be able to do splits and you're not even close anymore. So that's absolutely normal. One thing to remember immediately when you start practicing, and when you start practicing pregnant, there's absolutely no toe stand. Because of the way that you hinge forward, the leg on your body functions like a lever, and the way that you fold forward, it can put a lot of strain on that SI joint, and that's why it's so important to be cautious of that posture. You just remove that one immediately. And the other thing that I would also say in terms of postures and exercises is, if something doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. There are some women that were like 2 days pregnant and they were like, I don't feel right doing cobra pose on my belly. Just stop. You're going to get messages from your body. You should definitely, this is the time for you to tune into yourself and pay attention. You know, the other piece about the beginning here is, in this beginning period, you're developing a ton of blood. You increase your blood volume by 50%. That's why when you walk up a short flight of stairs, you're winded, not because you're out of shape and lazy, but because you're suddenly having to move 50% more blood volume around your body. That's massive. It takes a lot. And don't be surprised if you need to do a lot less. So in terms of that type of stuff, remember that you need to slow things down because you're circulating more blood. And then finally, the recommendation for maximum heart rate will vary based on your body and your what your doctor or nurse, midwife wants you to do. But we try to, in general, keep the heart rate below 140. And if you don't know what that is, wear like an Apple Watch or a Polar heart rate monitor or something like that for a few classes. You'll get a sense of what that feel is. You're not going to have to monitor it every single class. One of the things that we have to talk with new moms about is right off usually is the heat, and I'll get into that a little bit at the end. It's not a big issue for us right now, but if you guys have particular questions about the heat, or will I be able to come back when the studio reopens and that type of stuff, I'll get into that, but just a little bit later. So while we're on the topic of relaxant, I just want to remind everybody that when you come out of this postpartum, any postures where your hips are fixed, so think like fixed firm. I'm going to just angle my computer slightly differently. Where your hips are fixed in a position and you run out of flexibility and mobility in the pelvis and you're going to keep trying to go backwards, or like a cobra pose where the pelvis is pushing forward and you're pulling the spine back away from it, that's going to put strain on the SI. So this is not the time for you to like get the best wheel pose you ever did or go as deep as possible in camel. So when you think about doing backward bends, you want to think about doing them from here. So like lifting and extending and going for a little bit less depth there. Particularly if you end up with diastasis recti, that's going to just work towards abdominal separation anyway. So we want to think about like moderating that intensity. And then postpartum, a lot of women have challenges with forward flexion postures and with like head to knee, where you're rotating the spine. Your pelvis is fixed. It's not going anywhere. You're rotating your spine. Your sacrum that's sitting in your pelvis, that's a piece of your spine. So if you turn as far as you can and then you can't go any further, you're going to try to pull your sacrum with you. That's going to bother that SI joint that we're talking about. It's so important for you to be able to deliver the baby, but we don't want to strain it. So like just sort of think about that when you're feeling stretching, that you're feeling it in your muscles and you're not feeling it in those strong, supportive, solid joints in your body. Yeah. Okay. So the next big thing to think about is, obviously you can't lay on the baby, right? So a lot of the stuff that we modify immediately, you think like your biggest thing in yoga is don't crush the baby. It's really not. It's more about your aorta. But for the first 13 weeks of your pregnancy, the fundus, the top of your uterus, is lower than your pubic bone. So it doesn't really matter. You can lay on your belly all you want to. After 13 weeks, that's when you generally get recommended not to lie on your belly anymore. And anything for you that feels like, especially as you get bigger, that feels like you're squishing or creating compression in your belly, we don't want that. What we want for your baby is that you have maximum blood supply and oxygen all the time. So anything that's going to feel like compression to that, we want to skip. So that would be all the belly down postures. And what we do in the regular original hot yoga series is we just have a replacement for every single one. And when we talk about the hot Pilates, we'll talk about like some of your options for you to replace those with. But there's other things that you might not even think about, that like if you think of the physics of rotation, if you took a Coke can, you held the top and the bottom and you rotated it, what would happen to that Coke can? It would compress at the middle. And that's the physics of rotation in the body. So as you turn your torso, you actually get like you wring out a washcloth at the middle. So what that means for spine twists is not a lot of depth. So it's okay to rotate your spine. Think about rotating from like your xiphoid right at the bottom of your rib cage up, and rotating more like your chest and shoulders than trying to get any rotation in your lower spine. And that's just going to mean a modification of depth for all of your rotation, pretty much. Try to keep it up top, keep it in the chest, as opposed to down where the baby's at. And that sort of brings us around to thinking about your aorta, because anything that is causing compression in the aorta is going to cause a reduction in circulation to the baby. And we don't want that at any point in development. We don't want any reduction in circulation to the baby. So sometimes you can feel that in spine twist, and sometimes you can feel that in forward flexion. So it may feel kind of okay for you to do a posture like rabbit in the beginning of the pregnancy, maybe even straight through 20 weeks. But then it gets to a point where you almost feel like it's restricting your lungs, or you're creating a compression in your belly. And that's when you stop doing the depth of those. So in terms of anything that's a spinal flexion posture, we generally replace it with cat and cow. You'll find as you get really big that being in this position is kind of a relief, because the weight of the baby hangs here and kind of away from your lungs. But the replacement to be able to get that flexion would be to flex around your spine here. There's usually enough room, and you can always modify it. If your biggest range of motion feels like it's too far and you're losing your breath, then you would simply come out of it a little bit and try to get a sensation of some stretching in your upper back. And I'll tell you, your breathing is going to be a really good indicator for you throughout whether or not you can do something. So lying on your back for like final Savasana, or for the setup of bridges, or for a posture like window moving pose is totally fine, as long as it feels fine to you. Somewhere around like 20 weeks. So for some women, especially if you have multiples, it's 18 weeks. For some women, it's not till 24 weeks. You'll notice when you lie on your back for too long that you kind of feel like you're losing your breath. That's your body's response to not having enough circulation. And that's the time when you should stop doing that. So you would move to taking a Savasana in a side lying position. And for side lying, it's really whatever position is comfortable for you. For most people, it's kind of like a nap position. If you have issues with your lower back or your sacral area, you may feel better if you stick a pillow or a block or something underneath your knee, so there's just not that pulling down feeling. But this should give you a good room to have the baby out of the way and your breaths out of the way. And you probably have learned from your internet research that lying on your left side is better, and that's to reduce the compression of the vena cava, which is totally true. For most people, it's not an issue at all. Lying on either side, it doesn't really matter. If you have, Julie is a nurse, so she can answer this better than me, but I believe it's hypertension. Is that right? You can give me a nod at the thing. Is it hypertension? No, she doesn't remember. It's whatever the condition is. I think it's hypertension that they recommend that you work on lying on your left side. But that's usually like for an ER visit for a pregnant woman. You know what I mean? That's not a response to a regular response for pregnancy. So anyway, if you're taking Savasana and you're lying on your back and you feel short of breath, that's your immediate cue that you need to stop that. And one of the questions that Julie had asked earlier this week was, can I do glute bridges, like the glute bridges we do on our backs? Is that okay? Or like, how long should I do them? And glute bridges are really good for pregnant women. So if you think about like your weight is changing, your center of balance is controlled by the strength of your hips, your glute muscles, and your pelvic floor, and it's changing your whole entire pregnancy. If you can keep up activation, because glute bridges activate the smaller muscles in the hips, your deep six rotators, they activate the pelvic floor. That's something that's going to be really good for you. So you're always strong and adapting to whatever, size, weight, shape, how far you're sticking out for your body. In terms of how much can you do them, as long as they feel good. And when it comes to glute bridges, you might find that like one set you can do it and you start to kind of get a little bit out of breath. So do one set, and the other couple of sets you could do another glute activation exercise. So let me just angle my screen down one more time. We'll take it to the side. So if we went in that same side lying position that we did for Savasana, you can do a glute activation exercises like clams, where you open and close the knees. And there's tons of variations you can do with clams. You could add a resistance band and you could pulse it. You can take the feet up in the air. You'll notice you'll activate a different part of the glute. And then you can always do the leprechauns where you're rotating here. But we can still add to that and add different variations like bend the bottom knee, straighten the top, and you can take the leg forward and back for rainbows, or you can pulse the leg up and down. You can make circles in the air. And what you'll find is this is a good place for you. If you're in class and you're like, it's starting to feel like it's too much, roll over on your side and do some of this type of active recovery where you're catching your breath, you're slowing things down, but you're still working on these really small and really important muscles for stabilizing you. Your hip muscles and the deep six muscles, they're responsible for connecting your lower body and your upper body and making sure that they feel stable and they work well together, which is exactly what a pregnant woman needs. So any of those type of exercises are going to be really good. If you remember back from the old school Jane Fonda days, you can do glute exercises like fire hydrants, or you can do the up and downs. You can make big hip circles here. If you know FRC, it's a great time to do your hip cars. So your kneeling or side lying hip controlled articular rotations. If you don't know what that is, just look up online, FRC, hip cars, CARS. There's tons of educational videos out there about them. Those are a great option or a tool to have in the toolkit for pregnant women. Now, if I'm going too fast, please slow me down and we can talk about other stuff. Heart rate. Your breasts are actually a real, oh, I see you coming close, Jules. Did you want to say something?
Just because you were talking about it, I think that FRC is way more comfortable for me for some of the postures than doing the other modifications. So like the spinal articulation cat and cows feels better for me than doing regular cat and cow.
Yeah, and so if that's something that's unfamiliar to you, let me just show you the difference between those. So if you took like a traditional vinyasa class and you did cat and cow, you would go exhale, forward bend. Exhale, forward bend, inhale, backward bend, and you do it like to the beat and the rhythm of your breath. In functional range conditioning, you actually work at trying your best to move every single joint independently. So what Julie's talking about would be, instead of changing my whole spine, I'd start by tucking my tail under and trying to bend up the lumbar spine, hit the thoracic from the bottom of the ribs, now past the bra line, now between my shoulder blades, now into my upper back, and now finally neck. In this position, lock out the upper back in the forward bend, and then lift your tailbone and start backward bending in your lower back only, and then the bottom of the rib cage, and the mid back, and the upper spine, and then finally, lastly, your neck. Same thing, lock out the upper spine and the back bend, and start to move your lower back. What this is going to do is it's going to give you better control of the joints in your spine. And the thing about it, especially with pregnancy, the more control you have, the better. So you're moving, injury, as they say, shits both upstream and downstream. So if you have a part of your spine that doesn't move, somebody either above there or below there is going to have to move to do that job. So if we can start to get back range of motion, those places that don't move or don't move with control, your chance of having an injury down in the SI or having neck pain and upper back pain is a lot less. So, and with FRC, what you're looking for is your range of motion in the stretch, and then you add strengthening to it. So maybe you're doing a posture like, I can't think of a good one right now, but if I can think of one, go ahead and ask your question, Julie, and I'll try to see if I can come up with a good example.
And then the other thing too, for the glute bridges, super tall. So me laying on my back is like very comfortable, very far throughout the pregnancy. So I understand now why you have it as a modification, because people who are shorter have less room in their torso. So I don't feel any shortness of breath or anything like that at this point. It just takes a while for me to feel that if I'm laying on my back. So
totally. Yeah. And like how you carry, if you carry it in front. Yeah. For me, I had pressure up under my ribs immediately. So like anything I could do to back bend away from the baby would like allow me to tab. Tab is also almost 5 months. Cat tab, there's 2 other women on here that are 5 months along in their pregnancy as well. And great to see you. How are you feeling?
Wonderful. Much better than the first trimester.
I'm so glad. Both Emily and Lily are stuck in the first trimester and they are feeling like garbage cans.
Hang in there, guys.
It gets a lot better. And just so that you know, I know you're jumping on a little bit late. I'm recording this, so we will have it available later. I just was double checking to make sure I actually did record it. Okay, so we talked about that. Okay, let's talk about breasts, because breasts are a big deal. Breasts and breastfeeding. It depends on you and your pregnancy, but some women's breasts get really huge and some are really, really sensitive. So anything that you're doing that's bothering it, you need to just skip it. Just like you wouldn't squish the baby, you don't need to squish your breasts. And the same goes postpartum when you are breastfeeding, because some women, like my friend Emily, gets mastitis really easily. So like she'd come in and feel fine, do cobra pose, rest on her belly in Savasana, and go home that night and have a blocked duct. You know, so it really depends on you. For me, I came back, I would say, a week back into practicing. So this was probably 6 or 7 weeks postpartum. I could lay on my belly and was fine, but I never had an issue with that. So I never had to be sensitive about it. So some of the modifications that you're taking in yoga, like not lying on your belly, as a postpartum woman, you might continue to do. Or maybe you can take the posture like a cobra on your belly, but then you have to immediately go to a sideline Savasana position. Okay, so things that are really good for you while you're pregnant is anything that's core, that's glute activation. And then in terms of your abs, so we had talked about needing to make modifications, like what should I do instead of crunches and stuff like that. So when we talked earlier about like not compressing your aorta or reducing blood supply to the baby, the same goes for crunches. So as soon as you get pregnant, you're not going to do any of those old school crunches or sit-ups that we did back in the 80s. But if it feels, let me angle the computer down, if it feels comfortable for you to do a neutral spine position, you can take pretty much any neutral spine abdominal exercise. So in thinking about finding your neutral spine, pelvis on the floor, lower rib cage on the floor, but there should be enough room that you could get a couple of fingers under your lower back. And then what you would do if you were in like a physical therapist's office is you would practice what they call the dead bug, and maintaining that completely same spine position. You practice bringing arms over your head, and you'll notice when the arms come up, especially if your shoulders aren't flexible, that you want to arch into a back bend. So as long as you can keep the lower ribs down, you can try that, or you can extend one leg, both legs, or arms and legs in that position, or you could do something like alternate and hold, and to just practice feeling these muscles across your belly engage, and to think about how they work, right? You've got one set of muscles that goes across the middle like a weight belt. You've got your crisscross muscles, your obliques that are at an oblique angle that rotate you side to side, and then your rectus that flexes you. And to think about all those muscles, like, can you engage them all at the same time? Not like you're at the beach and you're trying to suck your stomach in so you look good, but imagine you're going to use all those different muscle groups and just like give the baby a gentle hug. And picture along the front, because there's a separation here. There's a tiny space in your rectus abdominis. Picture yourself pulling that together. You can actually put your fingers there. And when you engage the belly, think about pushing it together and see if you can feel it hold there. This will help you as everything keeps growing and stretching and growing and stretching. It will help for you to prevent the connective tissue that's between the two sides of the rectus abdominis from overstretching and creating a gap or a separation, which is really painful and a long, long healing process. So while the rest of the class, let's say you're in a Pilates class or some kind of a workout or a fitness class, so while the rest of them are doing, you know, seal kick crunches, you can sit up on your mat and practice holding your abdominals in nice and tight. Now, like we talked earlier, if laying on your back is uncomfortable and you can't take a neutral spine position, you can do abdominal exercises that seem easy and are really hard, like to sit up in this position and practicing bringing one leg up and over a water bottle. It sounds easy. Wait till you do it for 30 seconds. You're going to want to die. Or you bring one and then the other, right? You can put hands behind you to support yourself. Or you sit in that same position and practice hugging your abdominal muscles in, like you're giving those baby hugs, and then having that resting position. Any type of exercise where you can maintain a neutral spine is great for building abdominal strength and all that control you need as your core and your spine and your torso change. The other way that you can take that is to get back on hands and knees like we did for cat and cow, and to take bird dog. Now imagine you're on the ground, and you're on the ground again. So imagine your lower back is touching the floor, your hips are touching the floor. There's a tiny curve in your lower back. Give that little baby hug, and then take the leg behind you. And if you feel like you can add it, like we did in dead bug, add the hand. You can always get kind of crazy and add a backward bend by grabbing your foot. You can do things like wag the dog, the tail behind you, so bring the leg across your body. You can add pulses in here. Whatever it is that feels for you like you're moving your body and you're staying strong, to sub in there. Now, for those of you that are coming into the studio and taking classes, what you want to do is you want to ask the teacher and say, hey, what are we doing today? So that they can let you know, we're doing a hollow hold, you're going to substitute X. Let me actually pull up while we're talking. We have that, actually, let me share my screen with you guys on this one so you can take a peek at it. And that way it will be saved in the video if you want to take a look at it. I can also email this to you guys later. Can you see this? It says Inferno Hot Pilates on it. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go run through it together. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, and the other thing, it says at the top, practice intensity to tolerance only. It's just important to remember that your cardiovascular tolerance, as we talked about with your circulation, is going to be lower. So you have to be good to yourself and expect yourself to have the capacity to do less. So we talked about spinal articulation, replacing with that articulated cat and cow. The same thing here goes for the glute bridges, as we talked about with any glute activation exercises that you want to do. As long as you're working on the deep muscles around your hip and you can kind of get that sort of burny feeling in your glute med, that's perfect for you to do. The one we didn't talk about yet, we'll go down the left side first, are side planks. So one of the postures we do in Inferno Hot Pilates would be, excuse me, I choked, would be a side plank, right? And when you get pregnant, it's just, everything's loose. It's a lot harder. You can always take this exercise with the arm down, or you can try it with your leg in front and step into that leg to hold it up. Or you can always take what's called side bird dog. So it's this same posture we were doing before, except you take it here. And so it's a little bit more like a yoga pose, feels more like a stretch, but you can still get that sensation of strengthening all around the back of your hip and your glute. And so these are like simple tools for you to have in your tool chest to replace. In the Inferno Hot Pilates class, we usually do a prone or a belly down series where we do some kind of back bend on your belly, and then we do some kind of a plank. I'll jump up and grab the chat question. Hang on one sec. It's a little bit weird for me to see the chat during screen share. Okay, great. So for a plank position, it's totally fine if you feel good and strong to practice holding planks, elevated or forearm, but don't be surprised as the pregnancy goes on if this is just too much and too heavy and you need to practice it with your knees down. Sorry, I've got something in my throat. Or if you even need to do it on hands and knees. And again, anytime there is an option for a plank, you can always replace that with like a posture like down dog, which can feel really good to just have the weight and the pressure shifted in a different direction instead of the pressure of the baby always down in your bladder, to have it go in the opposite direction. And then when it comes to prone work, in terms of backward bending, it's anything that would be in an up position. So if everybody's lying on their belly doing like a Superman reach apart with their arms, you can take that in a kneeling position, in an upright position. You can add things like cactus arms to, again, like we were talking earlier, work at opening through your chest, because we're not going to do anything in a backward bend during pregnancy where you're driving your pelvis forward. And that's what we talked about in the beginning about not having your pelvis go one direction and your sacrum go in the opposite direction. So if you were going to do a posture like camel, in the upright position, you would work at lifting and extending. And depending on your mobility, or like for someone like Julie with a long spine, it may be easy for you to reach your heels. For other people, right away, you're only going to be able to do the beginning supported modification. And the most important part is that you're just listening to your body and doing what you can. All right, let's go to abs. So nothing of any kind of C-shaped spine or crunch. Because glute adduction and glute strength is so strong, we add an abduction with bands in your legs right at the beginning, because if you can't do an abdominal exercise, you can always add a resistance band to your leg and do some kind of pulsing in the class. And while it feels like it might be like weird to fit it into yoga, nobody cares what the pregnant woman is doing in class. And you should never feel like embarrassed or uncomfortable to be doing something like that. We talked about the leg lifts over a water bottle. I don't know what sitting knee in and out is. If you remember what that is, Julie, you can let me know. Upright bicycles. So you guys remember bicycles from your back. You can take those in pregnancy this way. So obviously the rotation is going to be less. If you're exhausted, then it's just the legs. And this is plenty of work on your core and spinal support muscles and your hip flexors. And anything that we're doing that has a neutral spine, you can always try it. So let me just flip my view to make sure you guys can see me angled here. So if we're doing a posture like we talked about early, an ab exercise like a Pilates crunch, you maintain the neutral spine, you can practice that contraction lifting up and down. So you're not going to do a crunch here where you'd curl your spine, but you can practice that very simple and small contraction of a Pilates crunch up and down, where just like before we talked about the baby hugs, you're thinking about those muscles not bearing down like a weightlifter, but just kind of hugging in your belly. Any type of leg exercise, squats, all that stuff, if the belly's in the way, you can open your legs wider and just pay attention to how it feels. Like if your knees are bothering you or your hips are bothering you, don't go as deep or as far, and practice always keeping the weight back in your heels. But what's going to happen as the pregnancy moves on is, in terms of getting your heart rate up, leg stuff is going to kind of be your jam. So when you're taking class, if a teacher is doing some kind of a squat that you saw, like write that stuff down in your book of like stuff I can sub in for stuff that I can't do. Obviously you want your heart to be strong while you're pregnant. So it's important to get some cardio, but again, keep your heart under control. When you do, okay. I'm going to jump out of the screen share because you guys don't need to see this, and I want to just see my where I have you guys on here. So let me just show a burpee, because in Inferno Hot Pilates, we do burpees, which are absolutely fine to do pregnant because it's all stuff you need to do. So from a standing position, you would come to a squat. Squatting is great for pregnancy. This is actually a great way to deliver if someone would hold you up. In a high-speed Pilates class, you would plant your hands and jump to a plank. We're not going to do that stuff anymore because you're pregnant. So instead, you can step back and then step forward and press to lift up. Now there's going to come a time where that doesn't feel good anymore, where it either feels like it's too much or it's too much compression. And then you can simply replace those exercises with squats that are going to keep your hips nice and strong. So it would be squat to a press and squat to a press. And if you have access to weights or something heavy, you can get some really good cardio going by simply doing a curl to press in that same position. You'll just have to pay attention that your heart rate doesn't actually get too high. Mountain climbers, so again, like if a plank isn't available or accessible to you, you can always just slow the pace down. But if a plank isn't accessible, you can take a very similar position. So this would be power knees. This is your next highest cardio move, where you would pull your knee into your chest. This is going to get a lot going. Anytime you add multiple joints, so if you add legs and arms, you're going to get a lot more cardio out of it. So, and then finally, if that gets to be too much, it's too much cardio, you can hear me, I'm short of breath, then you can just take a standing and go back to aerobics from the 80s. You know, at least you're moving your body and you're keeping yourself strong and fit and your heart strong for, you know, the biggest day of your life. You get ready for the Super Bowl. Be able to push that baby out. Okay, when it comes to arm stuff, you know, very quickly, a lot of women really just can't do push-ups anymore. If you're doing a practice like that, sometimes if you have a lot of fluid and inflammation during your pregnancy, the wrists just hurt. You can always start by holding something. So holding a grip like on a weight or on one of those push-up bars, or just don't do push-ups. You know, you can just stop. The other way though for you to sort of down-regulate that in your practice would be to take it up a level. So instead of trying to be parallel to the floor, take it up a level, like doing it on the edge of a chair, or even as the pregnancy gets later, doing it right up against a wall. The greater that incline is, the less pressure will be there. And it's not easy to get a lot of chest strengthening. So if you're a big bodybuilder, to, you know, be able to do some kind of wall push-up so you get your chest a little bit is probably going to feel good to you. Okay, diastasis recti. And then, okay, just to talk about the heat in terms of coming back, you know, it's generally our policy that we don't let anyone start a hot practice in the first trimester. And it's not because it's dangerous. So just to start there, in the research that's been done on heat and in particular hot yoga, The average temperature increase for the average woman is 0.6 degrees, which is well within your safe range. And actually in running, the average temperature increase during a run is 1.2 degrees, so twice as much. And the reason for that in the hot room is that you're covered with sweat and your body cools very, very frequently. You may have a doctor. I mean, if you have a condition, a circulatory condition or you know, pulmonary hypertension, you obviously can't be in the heated environment. And so, you know, ask your doctor about it. But a lot of physicians think that it's like either a sauna, which is over 140 degrees, or it's like a jacuzzi where you're in 105-degree temperature up to your neck and the only place that you can cool is in your face. So it's neither of those circumstances. Your whole body is covered with sweat that is evaporating. And so most people feel like respond to it very well, unless you have some kind of issues with acclimatization towards the heat. And what we've done at the studio to help new moms feel comfortable is encourage people to bring a thermometer to their first few classes or their first dozen or their first 50. And what we've got is the same exact results, about a 0.5 degree temp increase during class for the average mom. The only thing I would say to you is, if you bring your thermometer into a 105-degree room, when you put it in your mouth, it's going to be 105 degrees. So it would take a really long time for your body to bring the temperature down to your temperature. So what you want to do is like wet a paper towel and wrap it around it. So when you take it off, it's actually cool because that's been evaporating too, and put it in and take your temp so that you have an accurate reading. Yeah, so in terms of people being upset or worried about the heat, it generally comes from a place of fear, but not from a place of anything actually being dangerous. In fact, the temperature of your traditional hot yoga class is the same as it is like right around the equator. It's where people live like 24 hours a day, 365 degrees a year in the same relative humidity or heat index. And that's where the highest birth rates are in the world. So that's saying something. So let me know what you guys have for questions in terms of postures and practicing. I don't know how many folks here are practicing the traditional 26 and 2 series. Do you guys want me to go over those postures or talk about common postures you need to replace? Just let me know. Feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So for your spine alignment, because obviously squats can be a little bit much on my like SI stuff. Do you want your lower back to have an arch or to not have an arch in it when you go down? Because I'm able to see myself in the mirror as I'm practicing in. So I'm wondering, do you want me to have an arch or no arch?
You definitely don't want to have a rounding when you squat. So you don't want to flex forward. If you can do it without your lower, so let's think about it this way. Like, what are the requirements for a squat? Your ankle has to flex, your knee has to flex, and your hip has to both flex, so here, and externally rotate. And what happens for most of us is in one of those joints, we lose the ability for it to do what we need it to do. So then to get lower, we do it in the spine. Notice that my hips and pelvis have changed not at all. So if you're getting rounding in the spine, it's because you're trying to get down in a squat that you don't actually own and you don't have the prerequisites for. So to really think about as you do them, okay, I feel my ankle, I feel it in my knee, I feel my hip going as far as I can, and then boom, there's a block, or there's no block and I can go all the way down. And notice that there's not a ton of change in the spine. My chest is going to be a little bit forward, and that's for load bearing. That will change as your belly changes with time. But to start to really think about when it comes to like stuff like your SI, if your hip won't go anywhere anymore, your sacroiliac joint is going to try to do that job for you if you keep going deeper. So in terms of retaining control, it actually means like scaling it back and staying on the other side of that discomfort for you, like always. Because your SI is not a hip, and when you try to make it function like a hip, that's when it hurts.
So I'm having, but I'm actually having like, I feel like it's better to go into it without I'm arching that way. I need to tuck it under. When I see you go down, you're flat on your back. I'm not having any issues with rounding.
Yep.
Too much.
Will you actually, Julie, do a squat? Open your feet a little bit wider. Turn your toes out just a little. Yep. Oh, I see your little bump. And then go ahead and go down.
Yeah. It's just I need to focus on not doing that. I need to pull
Yeah, but the thing about it is, in a squat, you are having some mobility in the pelvis. This is okay. If you are like really, really overdoing it, doing hyper extension at the lower back, and if you're getting like tired in your back as you're doing it, you're probably trying to make your back be a hip. But there is going to be a degree of flexion of the pelvis. You're going to have an anterior pelvic tilt as you go down. That's okay. What I would watch for you, because this is the same thing in half moon, is that you're not pairing it with a rib flare. So can you let your pelvis come forward and imagine there was a shoelace from rib to rib and try to tighten those shoelaces and pull them together. So you feel here, instead of it sticking out, you're pulling it together so you feel supported as you're doing that.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, and then the feet distance thing, as I'm going along and getting a little bit bigger, I'm noticing I'm putting my feet out and out. That it's more like a goddess squat than a
totally squat. And the thing about squats are how wide your feet are this way and how much you have to turn your toes out has a lot to do with what's going on in your ankles and your hips. So if they aren't moving a ton, you're going to have to rotate out to give yourself that room to get up and down. So really give yourself the capacity to adjust for that, to open the legs wider, to turn your toes as much as you need to. And for everybody listening, the only thing you want to be cautious about as you change your feet is that you're not allowing yourself in a squat position to let the knees cave in. So this means your glute med and the deep six aren't working. Pull your knees out over your toes and turn the toes out as much as you need to, as long as you can keep the knees over the toes. You probably couldn't do a plie position from ballet because you couldn't keep your knees back that far. But also to remember that varying your practice through like different degrees of rotation and different depth up and down is actually good. We want to stress our tissues in all situations so that if you like slip while you're walking down the stairs, your tissues have the capacity to absorb that pressure or that force. Make sense? Yeah.
And the you were talking about doing like the regular yoga and stuff like that. Remind me again, twisting. I've been doing the opposite way, like I've done your east and west.
Yeah, let me show spine twist. So this is another thing that like depending on I'll go a little touch higher than that. Depending on the size of your body, like me, I'm super short in the torso. So when I want to turn towards the camera. So when I had a tiny bump, I mean, I'm banging into the leg already. The baby's there. I really can't rotate. So what we do in that circumstance is switch the legs. You can go the same option as everybody else, but you turn this way so that the baby is on the open side of your leg. So instead of trying to turn into your legs, you're actually turning away from them. You can do, if you want to do the same legs as everybody and twist the opposite direction. In terms of practicing in class, I always turned the same way so I wasn't like staring somebody in the face. But again, remembering that most of this rotation is going to happen because your capacity for rotation is in your chest and neck. So thinking about it's just about opening here and that's it. And it's really not. This is not the time in your life to be striving for depth. You're not going to get an advanced posture. You're not going to finally nail the splits. You're just trying to keep your body adapting to all the changes that are happening on a daily basis. So since we're talking about the regular 26 and 2 series, let's just talk about the belly down series. So when you think about a posture or the replacement you want to make for it, think about replacing it with something that does something similar. So in Cobra, we're doing a backward bend as much as we can. So what we do to replace that is a posture called fish. And if you've been practicing the advanced series, you can do this one up on the top of your head. But for most people, what we do is have you start on your elbows and simply try to mimic the actions of Cobra, where you pull your shoulders down and lift your chest. The posture can also be done if you have the mobility and a healthy neck here. But for a lot of people, when you're starting out, this doesn't feel good. And you probably want to have a teacher show you how to do it or just help you with your alignment so that you're not like straining and wiggling around in your neck. The next one in that sequence is locust pose. And all we do for locust is flip it over and take it to bird dog. So same thing, working on core strength, balancing one leg at a time. For full locust, if you have a lot of mobility in your hips and you're comfortable in pigeon, you can do what's called flying pigeon, which is upright here, or even if it feels good to you here. But if you have anything going on with your hips or your lower back, it's a lot easier to simply do this one kneeling and then really practice like you are saluting the judges in gymnastics, opening through your chest. And if it feels better to you, you can practice that in that lat pull down or cactus position, dragging your elbows towards each other and bending a lot through the upper spine. And then the last one would be floor ball. Obviously, you can't lie down on your belly. And for that one, we generally sub in a yoga bridge, which is not the glute bridges from Pilates. So in Pilates, we do neutral spine, hips up and down, glute activating activities, exercises, pulses, knee movements, legs in the air, all that type of stuff that's really important at building strength here, and in the pelvic floor. A yoga bridge is one that's about flexibility and mobility. So you would take here a big breath, and as you exhale, tuck, curl, roll, lift, and when you come up here, take a second to adjust your shoulder blades closer together. Some people, you can grab your ankles, you might be able to interlock your fingers so that the weight and pressure isn't your upper back on the floor anymore, it's really your shoulders. And then you drive feet down and lift your chest up so that you can back bend as much as possible. When we did the glute bridges, we were trying to not back bend. We were trying to keep the spine neutral. In yoga, we're really just trying to find a way to get a little bit of a backward bending position here. Okay. When it comes to the other front side compression stuff for the Bikram series, the hot yoga series, it's pretty simple and easy to imagine stuff. If you're going to do a forward bend over your legs, open your legs wide and make room for your belly to fit down in between. A posture like rabbit, instead of flexing into rabbit, you replace with that articulated cat and cow that we did earlier. And you know, I'll tell you, during pregnancy, one of the things I missed the most was like that stretch to the upper back. So being able to even just kind of curl in here and lean into the shoulder blades in some different ways is a great way at releasing tension. And when you get to the last two postures, this is one of those postures, separate leg head to knee. You have to rotate the torso, so hips are fixed, spine is turning, sacrum's trying to turn. That is usually not comfortable for most pregnant women, and you may want to give up fairly early in the process. For some women, they feel totally comfortable and can do this spinal flexion with hand on the knee the whole pregnancy. For a lot of other women, they take this into a side bend, so hand on the floor or your shin, and just bring the arm up and over and stretch. This feels really good and stretches the big, thick muscles at your waist that are working so hard to stabilize your constantly changing body. And when it comes to the final, obviously taking it on the other side, when it comes to the final stretching, instead of squishing the baby, you simply take it with the legs wide and take it forward, or in a bound angle or a Baddha Konasana posture with your legs together. Now, this is a good one to have in your toolkit because this position actually increases your pelvic inlet by 17%. My friend Pubali, when she delivered her baby, she delivered her on her back in this position, holding her feet into her chest. So for a pregnancy, we wouldn't hunch down over the baby, but rather hold the feet, stretch your spine, and practice pulling your knees towards the floor. And then in the traditional 26-2 posture class, you finish with a spine twist. An option that a lot of women feel more comfortable with, instead of this version we did where you turn away from your legs, would be to take a reclined abdominal twist. And I just want to reiterate, we have a great video about reclined abdominal twist, but I just want to reiterate in this one that we're not trying to twist your lower back and your hips at all. So start on your side like you're taking a nap on the couch, and then rotate the chest open to the side. My couch is in the way, but you rotate back as far as you comfortably can and try your best to just get some relaxation and opening in your chest here in that type of a position. If you have other practices like vinyasa, you'll probably just have to be cautious about, like, those shifts between up dog and down dog are not always comfortable for everyone. For a lot of women, just there's so much change in circulation and flow that the wrists tend to become tender. That's when you know it's a good sign to just stop doing the hands part of vinyasa. You can take a vinyasa flow. Let me give you an example. So instead of a traditional vinyasa flow where you would inhale, arms up, exhale, halfway, half fold forward, inhale, halfway lift, exhale, jump back to a up dog and then a down dog, you can take feet wide to accommodate your belly, the beginning stuff, inhale, half lift, exhale, forward fold, and you can try something like step back to a lunge, rise to a backward bend. Everybody goes into down dog, you take it on the other side. So there's very simple ways for you to get that same feeling of a flow in your practice if you're a big lover of vinyasa, without actually having to do the load bearing of down dog and up dog, because they take a lot of strength and they do put a lot of strain on the shoulders and the wrists. We didn't really talk about lifting and arms and stuff like that. But as long as you're not lifting a lot of weight, so if you are a power lifter, you're going to need to get support from someone who has been pregnant and been an Olympic weightlifter. And I'm not your girl on that one. But a lot of adding weights and adding arm movement. So for example, if you're in the Pilates class and we're doing a set of abdominal exercises that you just can't really do, these aren't weights, they're socks, but let's just pretend everybody could be doing a set of flutter kicks and you could be doing a set of biceps curls or overhead triceps extensions. And those are simple ways that you can sub in stuff that you can do that makes it feel like you're moving your body and you're getting strong and you're getting a workout. We don't feel like you're missing out on something. There's nothing that we do in terms of weightlifting in the class that you wouldn't want to do except for anything that would be a fluid motion like a Russian swing, where you take a weight in between your legs and you swing it up and down. I mean, that's not, leave that stuff to the lumberjacks and to when you're not pregnant or immediately postpartum. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to throw any questions out there, or you can type your questions into the chat and I'll respond and answer them. Remember too, when you're practicing, right, you are hydrating not just for yourself, but for your baby. So, you know, good practices with hydration and fuel and stuff like that. Pregnancy is never a time to do any kind of a fasted workout. So make sure, even if you feel gross, that before you're practicing, you're getting something inside your body. Even if like all you can tolerate is like 200 or 300 calories, like a big snack, then start with that. Question? All right. Let me give you guys
You like dead bug as a modification, I wasn't able to listen to that whole dead bug, but dead bug is a good one.
I do, as long as you feel comfortable and you don't feel out of breath. I mean, dead bug is really challenging. You know what else is a good, really challenging one is heel dips. And the thing about heel dips, when you're gigantically enormous, doing them one at a time is going to be plenty for you. But a little bit earlier, trying to maintain this feeling of ribs and hips close together and tapping your heels to the ground and up is so challenging. Or you could do like Andy did in class the other day, tap, go a little farther out, tap, see if you can maintain the same contraction and then pull it up to a hold and tap, tap, hold. We don't want to be doing crunches and clamping down in your belly, but having your abdominal muscles stay strong and supple are going to be a massive help for you for stabilizing your body and your torso during the pregnancy, for getting the baby out and for recovering, you know, for you feeling better and feeling strong again and not having quite so much pain. And the other thing is, for those of you that haven't had a baby before, when the baby comes out, the day before you have the baby, people are opening the door and rubbing your feet, making you tea. As soon as that sucker comes out, they're going to drop you like a hat. Nobody cares about you anymore. There's no more, you know, what is the postpartum care protocol for a mom? They like check on you the next day. If you had a big surgery, they'll check your stitches in a week. Other than that, like, good luck for you. So it's important to know that what you're going through in your body is a really big deal and has a big impact on how you feel and how you use your body. So finding somebody you can connect with postpartum that may be like a pelvic floor specialist or a physical therapist who does postpartum work is really important. Nobody is going to find time for you. They're not going to carve it out. They're not going to fight for you. But for you to say to yourself, like, I know, I mean, you can't be a good mom and be breastfeeding and up all night if your body feels like trash, you know? So to remember that you're not just going to need support like by going to La Leche League, but that you're going to need somebody to like help you with your body, and you shouldn't be peeing your pants for years afterward. You know, all those things are common but not normal. And so to just put that in the back of your mind, that it would be, if you live in our area, the best support you're going to get is from Oceanside Physical Therapy. They're absolutely incredible. If you actually follow them on Instagram, whoever you are, it's Oceanside PTNH, I believe is their Instagram handle. It's worth following them now because they've got lots of instructional videos and like they do Q&As on like uterine prolapse and all stuff that you're not necessarily thinking about right now, but it's just good to sort of understand the how and the why. They've got a really great exercise in there on doing pelvic floor breathing. So everybody told you to do Kegels during your pregnancy, but that concentric contraction of a Kegel exercise is actually the weakest position for your pelvic floor. So learning how to relax your pelvic floor, how to contract it isometrically and eccentrically, all that stuff that they can help you with now, so that you don't end up being somebody who has, problems with pooping and peeing for years after having a baby.
I've been to them. So with my second child, I actually was peeing my pants. I was like 27 years old. I was peeing my pants and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I actually went to go and see them when I was pregnant, probably about 6 months. And I was able to stop peeing my pants that far into my pregnancy. And then I continued over, which was really great. So
that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm just kind of shook from all this information. Like the least informed pregnant person. So I'm just I never really was super interested in it at all. Growing up, I was like, oh cool, you're having a baby. All right, cool. And I'd back away slowly. And now I'm just I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a ton of information to take in. And that's why we're going to make sure you have a copy of this so you can go back and look at it. And also, we're here, all the teachers are here. I mean, there's so many people at the studio that have had babies that it's worthwhile just reaching out and asking people questions. And whatever you're going through, somebody else has gone through before, 100%, It's a new league, it's a new tribe.
Yeah. Thanks for putting this together.
Absolutely. Sophie, did you have a question?
No, I just want to say thank you so much. I was actually thinking about emailing you guys the last couple of weeks because I stopped doing yoga just because I was kind of scared and unsure what I don't want to hurt the baby. I don't want to hurt myself. And I'm very unexpectedly pregnant. And now that I'm older, I feel really different. So yeah, I'm really happy you answered so many questions today. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad. I mean, I would just have you to think in your brain, what are the big things? Be gentle with yourself and your body. Make sure the baby's always getting plenty of blood and oxygen. I think if you stick with that, that's going to pretty much guide just about everything.
Take it easy. Don't take it too far. That question about Cobra was really good because I love doing Cobra and I love doing Rabbit, but I had no idea about the mechanics of it. So that really helped.
Yeah. And if it felt good to you the first trimester, it's fine. Now it's not. It's off the table.
I remember being in class at 7 weeks and right before we had to all stop. And I was just so tired. I felt like a truck had hit me. And I didn't understand why because I really didn't know I was pregnant yet. So when I figured out, oh, okay, that's why I feel 10 years older all of a sudden.
Yeah, seriously. I'll tell you, one of the things too that I remember from the beginning was, especially the first trimester, I felt terrible and didn't want to go to class every single day. And there would be some days I'd be like, you know what, Sarah, you're pregnant, listen to your body. During this hormone poisoning section at the beginning, you can't actually tune into your body quite as much because if you don't move, I'd stay home or I'd go for a walk, I feel like trash. If I came in and practiced, even though I had to practice at way less than what I was used to, I always felt better. I mean, it's helping to flush out. Your body can't process everything that's in it right now in terms of changing hormones and biochemicals. So even if all you can do is some simple gentle stretching at home, or you can get on the archives and do that 13-minute warm up with Heidi from her 60-minute plus class, it's going to make you feel better because you're improving your circulation.
Yeah, thanks for the motivation. I need it.
Yeah. Jen, do you have any other insights? Jen is just popped up on video. Or any other sort of recollections from your pregnancy that would be helpful to share?
Yeah, I would just say that it's just really, I remember you saying to me, Sarah, even if you just come in and roll around on the floor, and that was good. I mean, I felt comfortable coming to the studio, and I think I was the only pregnant person at the time. And just being there initially, just know that, you can just come in and do what you need to do and have snacks and water and be in the cool spot in the room and just feel okay about all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if any time in your life is the time to give yourself grace to do whatever you want to. The day that I had Judah, I was like, I have to do something to get this baby out. He was a week late, and I got to class and we did one set of the breathing and I was like, not hungry. So I left and I ate a granola bar, and then I came back during half moon. I mean, like, do what you need to do. You know, this is the time for you to take care of yourself. The other thing I didn't realize when I first got pregnant was, like, I thought, you know, you see movies about women being like, I need pickles and ice cream, and they have a huge belly. I thought that that was like cravings happen at the end. They don't. It's this time. It's the beginning, you know, that you're like, the only food I can eat is white rice, and you just have to eat it. You know, you have to get it. So, like, whatever that is, just take care of yourself. You know, you're making a person. So any other questions, we'll give it just another minute. But I'm so glad to have you guys on here, and I will email all of you guys individually and send you the link once it's up on YouTube. All right. Okay, you guys have an awesome night. It's good to see you. Can't wait to see you actually in the studio. And again, email me with any questions. Bye.
Bye, guys.